One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting discussion of Delusions of Grandeur. I am your host for tonight and for this discussion. And tonight we're going to continue our holiday seasonal grand gesture of film discussion. And tonight we have for you from 1989,
a holiday classic.
Tim Burton directed this film, and the film stars Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, and Kim Basinger, among other people. So, first, let's see what IMDb says about the film, and then we'll go into first impressions. So, the Dark Knight of Gotham City begins his war on crime with his first major enemy being Jack Napier, a criminal who becomes the clownishly homicidal Joker. So, first impressions, starting with, how about you, Jake?
Okay, well, obviously was not a first-time viewing. At this point, Batman, the character Batman, but a lot of his supporting cast too, are so ingrained in the popular culture that it's really hard to say what my first impression really is, because the movie is tied to that overall impression. It really is. I know I saw the film probably not long after it came out. I'm pretty sure we did not hit the theaters for this one, but I saw it not long after. It probably was my first proper introduction to most of the Bat cast, if you will. But it wasn't long at all after this before we had the animated series starting, and then right on its heels, Batman Returns, which we'll be looking at here in a moment. So a lot of my impressions are all wrapped up with all of that together, and the toys. You know, I was big into the toys at the time, the merchandising of that.
Where did you get the wonderful toys?
Great line. And then the comics, I don't remember when I got into. I got into comics first through the X-Men, but for many years, Batman was the only DC property I cared about with the comics. So it's hard to say all of my impressions because they're all wrapped up in all of that. But for this movie particularly, to hazard a guess, I've probably seen it between 8 and 10 times. That would be my best guess. It's definitely the one I've seen most out of the 4 that were technically that series. I rewatched rewatched 3. Finally attempted the 4th one. I can say now that I have survived Batman and Robin. But this one I've always liked. I've always thought it was good. I don't think I may have thought it was a little dark when I first saw it, but nothing like my first reaction to Batman Begins, which we'll talk about with the next one. But I think generally my feeling on this has been good, but it's come and gone through the years. Some years I love it, and some years I'm like, but I'm kind of leaning toward loving it at the moment. Dave, I think you got your sound off.
Going over to you, Forrest. Sorry, still getting used to this new technology.
Yeah.
But, well, the darn thing has a mic mute button on the things. So Anyways, Forrest, why don't you tell us a little bit about your first impressions? Was this a first-time watch for you?
Oh hell no! I have, Lord knows I lost count how many times I've watched this movie in the last 28 years or so. I did not see. Unfortunately, I did not get to see it when it first came out. I was only a year old. I was only a year old when it came out in 1989. But I remember renting the hell out of it on VHS as a kid. And then at one point, my uncle recorded off of television for me, like recorded off of like HBO or something. And I watched that tape until I wore it out. And then I got it on DVD, and then I got it on, and then I remember getting the DVD. And my mom was like, "It's like, you could just rent that." But I'm like, "No way!" I've seen this movie, so I was already 13. I'm like, I've seen this movie so many times, might as well just own it. I have caught it in theaters a few times in the last I've caught it in theaters twice in the last 7 years, as well as a drive-in drive-in screening earlier this summer. That's just how much I love it. The toy. I had the toy. I also had all those wonderful toys. I had the Nintendo. I have the video games on Nintendo, Nintendo, Game Boy, and Sega Genesis. And I did collect. Also, I was a huge Batman first. So I've mentioned on here that I'm a collector and reader of comic books, and Batman was the first title I ever got. And I've been an avid Batman fan ever since. I've just huge Batman, always been a huge Batmaniac. Because I was so young when the movie came out, I didn't have any. I was so young when the movie came out that by the time I saw it, I had no premonitions of Michael Keaton as Batman. I know there was a lot of outrage over his casting at the time, but I was too young to remember that. Like for him, to me, he's always been Batman first and foremost. Although I would say he's. There was a period of time where I was like Christian Bale's the best Batman, but rewatching all of them recently during this pandemic, I'm kind of leaning more towards Keaton. I like how he's more of the strong, silent type. A lot more mysterious. A lot more. I like his more mysterious Batman. And Nicholson, he's great. He's great. He's just having a ball with the role. And also the soundtrack, the set, the production design, everything about it is. There's aspects that don't hold up, but like Batman offing Joker's goons.
Well, it's utilized in the most recent iteration in that with Batfleck's.
Batfleck. It's a child, but it's a childhood favorite. Probably still one of my top 10 superhero movies of all time.
I would have to say the same thing. I came at Batman. I think I actually saw Batman in the theaters when I was a kid. Maybe when I was like really, really young, my parents might have actually taken me to see it. I may not remember it much, but I swear to God, I did go and see it. But it wasn't until the second or third movie that it's like in between the second and third movies that I actually started paying attention to the Batman series. And I didn't get that whole vibe that everyone else did at the time that Batman Returns was a bad movie. Which I'll save that for later.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot to be said on that.
Batman Returns is great. Like I love that movie.
It is, but again, a lot to be said on that when it gets to impressions.
But I've always felt that the Michael Keaton Batman has always had more feeling and character to the Batman thing. Although we're kind of already set in the universe when the film first begins, it did not start with the whole shooting of his parents. Eventually, it's like it eventually went into the backstory of Batman. So Batman already had his technology and his mansion and shit like that, and he was already fighting the bad guys, So that's what we get, and I like I think one of the things that I liked about this Batman is the fact that all of the henchmen of the film were wearing like 1930s like pinstripe suits and shit like that, So
early on, at least.
But going over to you, Dustin, what is your first impression of the first Batman? Was this a first time watch for you?
No, it wasn't. So I first saw this many years ago. And my opinion of it has kind of evolved a little bit over the times. So initially I wasn't a huge fan of this movie, but it slowly won me over the years. Like when I first saw it, I think I actually saw Batman Returns first, and I loved Batman Returns like a lot. Like I would rewatch that on VHS so many times. But not the first Batman for some reason. I mean, I had a lot of merchandise from this Batman. Like I remember the kind of Captain Crunch-esque cereal that there was for it, and I remember having trading cards for it, and I had bed sheets for it because I was, I think, 3 or 4 when this came out, and we would watch the Adam West Batman on TV, which this is a pretty different animal.
Pretty different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe we were just. I think I went into it expecting it to be more like Adam West Batman, and then my brain could not handle it. Which is weird because Batman Returns is even darker and grittier, and that movie spoke to me like so well. But
Okay.
I mean, overall good impressions.
Okay, going over to you, Dane. Was this a first time watch for you?
Oh no, this film always brings a smile to my face. This is probably my favorite live action Batman movie, and it is way up there for my favorite superhero films. It did not always start off that way because now, I'll be honest, my first superhero film that I ever saw was Batman and Robin. I was the target audience. Well, I was the target audience for it because I was 5 years old at the time.
That sounds about right.
And so exactly. So at that age, I liked it, because how could I not? I was 5 years old, and it's basically a live action cartoon. And, at that time, I was kind of used to the Bat family. So not just Batman and Robin, but also Batgirl and the rest of them. That's kind of how I conceived of Batman for a long time. And I watched like Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, which I liked at the time as well. So it's like that whole era, 97, 98, that's my initial impetus for Batman, and then I got into reading like the Gold and Silver Age comics and stuff, and then years later, this would have been as Batman Begins was coming out, I watched this film on the Sci-Fi Channel back before they changed their name to Sci-Fi, and of course they stuck in like 10 million commercials and made it like 3 hours long just because of that. And I remembered seeing it, and I thought it was really weird and fucked up, and I wasn't really used to it. And then Batman Begins came out, and that kind of became the Batman of my generation, which then continued into The Dark Knight, all that stuff. Then once all of the Christopher Nolan fanboys, once they all came out of the woodwork because of The Dark Knight and Inception and that kind of stuff, then I kind of to get away from all of that, and to be anti, obnoxious fanboys, I went back and really dug into what Tim Burton was doing, and even and some of what Joel Schumacher was doing, particularly with Forever, because there's a lot more. There's a lot more good stuff in Forever than people remember. There's a lot of terrible stuff, but there's more good stuff than people remember.
I remember Batman Forever was
Shiny,
okay.
glowing, mixed bag.
Yeah, it was very mixed bag. But like, point being that, like, as I was getting away from all of that, I got into this film and really got into it, because by this point, keep in mind that I was really getting into like film noir and into like silent films and stuff. And Tim Burton is one of the only people in Hollywood that really loves like German expressionism and Gothic fiction and stuff like that. Not really a comic book person, not really a superhero person, and yet those sensibilities work so well for a character like Batman, especially when you're.
He also came from the same school of David Lynch, so.
Well, that, but also like specifically when you're deriving from this era of Batman, this is like Golden Age Batman. So like Golden Age Batman used a gun. Golden Age Batman killed people. Golden Age Batman was like a weird creature of the night, not necessarily a hero in the way that we think of today. That kind of stuff. So this is totally in that mindset, and it looks like it.
See,
for that kind of Batman, which I think that's probably my personal favorite era for Batman, is like when he was just this weirdo that kept away from people and that kind of stuff. Like, that to me is who Batman is, or at least a very, very interesting version of Batman. I like the idea of someone that we won't ever fully psychologically understand, because he's so different from people, but he has this drive to do what he does. It's different than like what Christopher Nolan was doing, where he was really trying to humanize Batman and really trying to have him create a world where he's no longer needed. And I'm thinking, well, Batman, at least the one that I know, there's no right or wrong Batman. I think that there's a ton of versions of it. The one that I like the best. The one that I like the best is the one where he's so psychotically committed to doing what he does that there's no way he would ever stop. And that's what you hear in this film, where he's like, I've tried to avoid all this, but I can't. This is how it is. He's out there right now, and I've got to go to work. And it's like that. That's about as Batman as can be. But yeah, this is my favorite Batman in terms of style, in terms of interpretation of the character. It's my favorite Batmobile. It's my favorite suit. It's my favorite live action Batman. It's the classic version of the Joker played in a classic way. It's just all around classic.
Real quick note on one thing Dane just said. One thing I've always liked about the Batman group, and again, we'll get into this as we go along with this one and the other one. I feel almost like Batman and the Joker and certain other characters, they're very Shakespearean characters in a lot of ways. And I feel like you can actually bring completely different things to the table and still be true to the character in a way that you can't do with a lot of other characters. Like, it works a lot better to do that with the Batman group than, say, the Superman group.
Right.
Well, the Superman or like, but even within that, different actors bring something to it. Different actors bring something to like Spider-Man or to James Bond. Every James Bond is different than the last one, and that's how these things work. It's what can you bring to it that's different, and sometimes it really lands, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it lands, but it comes from the totally opposite angle. Like, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker would totally not fit in this world, because he, compared to Jack Nicholson Joker, Joaquin Phoenix Joker is like kind of a pathetic wannabe, but again, he fits perfectly within the world, whereas this Joker feels like this is like
He
the arch
owns the
villain of
place.
this world. Exactly.
I should mention though that that for me it's easier to compare Nicholson and Ledger,
Right.
and even Jared Leto, whereas Phoenix, it's hard for me to compare him to all of them because he had no Batman to play. He had no Batman to play off of.
Oh yeah, Phoenix is an outlier.
You have to compare his Joker. You can't even really compare it to other superhero films. You have to just compare it to like Taxi Driver and 1 Hour Photo and movies like that, which is great because those are some of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay.
But that's my point: is you bring new things to it. But with a film like this, it helps give you a great baseline, at least in live action, from which to measure. Because I think this is still the best live action Batman. Best at least in terms of classicness, best Joker, because like Heath Ledger is fantastic in his own right, but he's not classic Joker. He's a reinvention of the character, but a really, really good one. But like here you get the classic origin. You get the fall into a vat of chemicals and have the chemical bleach skin and the Rick Mortis grin and that kind of stuff. You get all that you don't get in other places necessarily.
Let's put a smile on my face.
Wrong one.
Going over to you, Brandon.
While I was making my notes on this, so I can make sure I don't forget, I look at this Jack Nicholson Joker as sort of like a combination between the Mark Hamill Joker and the Joker from Suicide Squad. God, what's his name?
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto Joker. Yeah. Kind of a combination of those two.
Really?
Because he's much more gangsterish, which is more along the lines of the
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto, yes, a Joker, but also he has a style to him that was brought to it from the Mark Hamill version of the Joker, whereas
Nicholson came first.
Yeah. But actually, if you really want to go first, Dave, we messed up. We didn't cover the first Batman film. We didn't cover the Adam West Batman film.
No, we didn't. But I would like to eventually down the road cover that one.
So
the Adam West stuff is so.
I'll let this slide because this is like middle ground, and at least we're covering the first two Tim Burton films.
This is the first serious Batman, so I'm going to say it's the first one that counts.
If you want to like really, really nitpick, you can do what James Rolfe did. Well, hey, if you want to really nitpick, you can do what James Rolfe did and go back to like whatever that would have been 1920 something and do a movie called The Bat. Yeah, he did the movie called The Bat, which was the one that had the masked killer that wore a bat mask.
And also The Man Who Laughs. We'll have to do that one as well.
Yes. Direct inspiration for the Joker.
Just like Bob Kane saw The Man Who Laughs and was like, I got this.
Yeah. I kind of say
that woman.
What was that, Forrest?
After watching Batman and the Batman and Bill documentary, you kind of have to take what Bob Kane says with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as my first experience with this, I wasn't like a lot of people when it came to Batman in the comics. I was loosely involved with because my introduction to comics was kind of loose. I didn't really get into comics until the Death of Superman story. When that came out, that drew me in, and then I was kind of hooked, but then I gravitated more towards Marvel and Green Lantern. Because that was also around the time where Hal Jordan lost his shit and
Coast City was destroyed.
But I didn't get into Batman seriously in the comics until Hush, which is a good one. Ways after. But as far as the Batman film, the Tim Burton film, I actually saw this in theaters when it came out. My father went with me. It's a very rare thing. Those who actually know my father, which I believe is just Jake, knows that's a very odd thing for me to say. My father went to the theater with me to see the film, but we got through most of the movie. And then when it got to the final fight between Batman and the Joker, the film reel burned up, and we weren't able to see the end.
Wow.
And then about a year later, I was finally able to see the ending of the film.
Oh
Hmm.
man.
So,
jeez.
I was
it's not about money. It's about sending a message. Everything
The wrong movie
burns.
again.
So they didn't give you,
Heath Ledger was sabotaging it at the time.
so they didn't give you free tickets or anything for that?
Well, I wasn't an adult at the time, so I couldn't tell you what was going on with it behind the scenes. I think I was this is 89?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like 9 or 10. So my whole interest in getting my money back from my tickets, I wasn't quite as in that mind back then.
No, I'm thinking more like, I want to see the end.
Yeah, exactly.
I was traumatized by that whole balloon scene, but we'll get to that. To me, I always considered this to be the essential Batman.
I did too. When I grew up, this was the essential Batman. In fact, when the Batman Begins came out, I didn't want to see it.
Well, and
in fact, I refused to until I was given the trilogy by my grandmother, because she thought that I would like it.
See, I was always open to the interpretations, though. And really and truly, though, I know Jake would probably differ from my opinion on it. I wasn't as angry. I didn't hate Heath Ledger's depiction of the Joker, but I disliked everybody saying he is the greatest Joker, hands down, and no others could compare to it. And that PO'd me, because I really liked the Jack Nicholson version. I really liked the Mark Hamill version, and to say that one was superior to those was not.
Well, it's hard to beat the Hamill version.
Though I have the Mark Hamill version, every time anyone refers to the Mark Hamill version, I've actually never seen an episode of them, even though it's sitting in my collection.
Are you kidding me?
Especially if you like this, because it has more inspiration from the Tim Burton style than it does the musically and just in general the feel. The Tim Burton feel for Gotham, the Batmobile, the Bat costume, the depiction, how they depicted Bruce Wayne. I liked it really. Really, this is probably one of my.
You have to understand. I live with a fiance that the only cartoon that she'll ever watch is Looney Tunes. So, or anything dealing with them, or Scooby Doo. Those are safe.
Well,
but
Batman the
anything
Animated
else,
Series is WB.
Batman the Animated Series is one of the best possible shows to school her on that fallacy of that opinion.
Yes, exactly.
It is.
And let's not forget that, with that show, that, like you said, it wouldn't exist without this film having set the mold, because that show was technically set in then modern day, but stylistically was totally from the 30s to its great strength. And same here, like, it's totally stylistically coming right out of the 30s. And but that to me, like, when I think of Gotham City in my head, that's what I see. And also, like, there's that, but also it's the mood, it's the feel, it's the broodingness, it's the fact that, you believe that Michael Keaton is someone that would, be eccentric and assertive as a billionaire, but also, brooding enough and not so the whole idea behind casting him was because Tim Burton was worried that, like, casting a quote unquote serious actor in that role would make people laugh unintentionally, and so Michael Keaton, being known as someone who predominantly did comedy, he felt would kind of offset that, plus the fact that he had worked with him in Beetlejuice and he knew just what a good actor he really was. It's so versatile and everything. And I think that was a really smart decision because underneath comedians tends to be a lot of tragedy, and so he was able to play that, but he also is someone who he said that physically Michael Keaton is not terribly intimidating looking, or rather he doesn't look like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or like a Clint Eastwood or someone that just looking at him that you wouldn't want to mess with him. So he would be the kind of person that would have to dress up as a bat in order to be scary. And
It's interesting
go ahead.
It's interesting that you mentioned Beetlejuice because he uses some Beetlejuice formula in the television commercial that eventually I'm sure we'll cover while we go through this plot line.
New and improved Joker products with a new secret ingredient, Smilex.
Probably pretty soon, huh?
Which to me I think was because he'd done Beetlejuice the year before. So
Yeah.
But I think it added well to the whole mixture of potions that he had in store for us. But let us get into the plot here. So we, in the very beginning, we have a couple of criminals end up running a woman down an alleyway.
Family.
They attack a family.
Yeah, they attack a family, and they're on the rooftop, and they're counting their spoils. And what do we know? Batman appears. So, what do you think about this whole beginning sequence?
Well, first you got to know that you've got a couple and a boy leaving a theater or some show or something.
They're just I think they're just tourists.
Yeah,
they were kind of doing a fake out.
Well, whatever the case, you do have this family going down an alley. So for anyone who kind of knows the Bat mythos, it's kind of a fake out. You're kind of set up to think that they're starting with the origin.
Yeah.
But then you're introduced to they're on the roof and the one starts talking about the bat. And then you're and it's like and then it is a pretty fun introduction. Like that first image of him standing in the background
coming down. Yeah.
That was a pretty cool way to do it.
Yeah. Oh man, that ain't how I heard it at all. I heard the bat got it. The bat, come on, give me a break.
Well, and interesting enough, one of those goons, I think in the very beginning, I believe, was Richard Strange, which eventually he was a Death Eater in Harry Potter. And also he was the executioner in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Oh, really? So, yeah. So,
I almost got to watch that for Martial Arts Month.
I mean, all of them workshop at Pinewood Studios in Great Britain. So
that's right.
But
well,
go ahead.
very quick point about the fake out thing. So. One thing as far as plotting, so one of the criticisms of the film, which I personally think is one of the best things about the film, people have said, oh, it's not about Batman. Well, no, it is.
Yeah.
Well, no, it is about Batman, but it's about Batman in the same way that The Great Gatsby is about Jay Gatsby, but it's not through his eyes. It's through the eyes of people around him. And therefore, it makes him more mysterious. Yeah, well, it's through Vicki Vale's eyes, it's through Alexander Knox's eyes, and even through the Joker's eyes. Yeah, which I think is brilliant because that makes our lead character more mysterious and dramatic. And in the same vein as that, you have a thematic subconscious planting of the idea that what happened to Bruce Wayne as a child continues to happen to this day, but it just so happens that Batman is there to, do something about it now. And, the fact that they kind of do it out of order like that helps to, it does establish things, but it's in a more thematic sense rather than in like a strict A to B, plot way that we're used to today. But I think that's one of the film's strongest aspects, that kind of it alludes to the origin, but it doesn't make it the whole movie. It
Right.
we start off Batman still relatively new on the scene, but we don't have to spend half the movie devoted to it. We just get enough of it to get the flavor of it, but we've already subconsciously had it planted in our heads that that's where this is going.
Right. This
Me-
is an early Batman. He's still getting his feet wet, if it will.
Yeah.
But the rumors are spreading. People are
Yeah.
starting to,
Well,
you know,
as
it's an
as
interesting way
it
to
was
do it.
as said, that I think he was cited like 6 times
Yeah.
when you come into the
Right.
Gotham newspaper room. So
Right. So I do want to say, as far as the idea of this, I read that too, that both the Burton films were heavily criticized for downplaying Batman as the central figure of the film.
Yeah.
And the second one starts with an extended prologue about Oswald Cobblepot's origin. You
Yeah.
know, and then you eventually get into Batman. And then with the 2 Schumacher ones, what do you start with? You start with suiting up. Like with
Yeah.
that. And it's kind of like it's obvious where the studio wanted it to be, and it's obvious that they were responding to the critics. And
Mhm.
it's like I liked Burton's approach much better. And
To me-
also, I'm just going to mention, and Brandon knows what I'm talking about here. We have a mutual friend who is no longer with us, who absolutely loathed Batman as a character, but liked the series. And the idea was he just thought Bruce Wayne Batman was just a huge dick, but he liked all the villains. And really, that was one of the things that always attracted me to Batman. I liked Batman okay. I thought he was a fascinating character, and I still do. I think he's a fascinating character, that duality of the different roles and whatever. But his rogues gallery was always more important to me than he was.
Yeah.
So the idea of them being the stars of the movie, and even Alfred is kind of like, I love Alfred. I always have.
Yeah.
I don't mind at all him sharing the screen. If it was all Batman, I would have been much less interested.
It's all
Well, and-
about the
and
villains.
let's-
The villains of the Flash.
Well, and
films.
let's not forget the fact that, again, comparing it to like the Nolan ones that really tried to make you, the audience, feel like you could do this if only you happen to be born the son of a billionaire.
His
the,
superpower as well.
Yeah, well, here's the thing though, is like one thing that I think people often forget is that, you know, Batman is not like everybody else, not just
No.
because he's born into immense privilege, but just psychologically, he is not like everyone else. Like, you have to be, that's the whole point that the Killing Joke made, which is that you have to be as crazy
Bad
as the
day.
people he's fighting
The-
in order to do this.
Bad.
The other
And
thing that you have,
the only Batman that you feel that was as crazy as these guys and would kind of need to do this, I think, was Keaton, and I think he got
I
it.
don't
you know?
know. I don't feel like Christian Bale was not playing an everyman. He was not playing someone who was a weekend Batman. He didn't
Not
want
a
to do it,
weekend
but-
Batman, no.
But
But
actually,
you get what I'm saying, though. It's like his whole idea was that he wants to create a world that no longer needs him. You know?
but I don't think that's exclusive to the Keaton role either. I don't think he wants to keep doing this his whole life.
well, I don't think that he has a choice. That's the
He
the
doesn't
difference.
think he has a choice. No.
Whereas I do feel like and again, that's not a slight to the Nolan
Right.
version. It's he had a job to do. He did the job. When the job was done, he walked. Done.
Yeah.
It was that was just how it was. And
in this one, he had witnessed the murder of his parents, which ultimately we find out through with a really cool, slow, imaged, a process of what exactly happened.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you kind of get the lead up with with the 2 reporters. But
What's that?
What?
I was just gonna say Batman is a Disney princess. They kill him.
And he lives in a giant castle. He's got a supportive caretaker. He doesn't have any cute animal sidekicks, but he
It
dresses as
wasn't
one.
the lack of trying. Both this one and Batman Returns, they had Robin in the script and wrote him out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is
And,
funny because in the 1930s version, and Boy Wonder was right there with him, and he was
Right.
already written into the story. So also in the 1943 version, he was his
Yep.
he was his ward. Also in the 1960s, he was already part of his life.
Let me
Yeah.
say this: it is very hard to take Batman seriously with Robin in his brightly colored tights, as we have learned from the other two Batman movies. Whenever you introduce Robin, it is extremely hard. They pulled it off in the animated series, but that's what I think is a difference in mediums.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't think you can do it in live action, or at least I don't think that I've seen anyone who's been competent enough to do it.
Well,
In the live
what they forgot to tell you is that Robin is in fact Robin Hood in
Well,
reality.
I think that they did it. I think they did it fairly well in Forever. Although he's definitely too old. Like
Yeah.
he should be at least a teenager because there he looks very clearly like he's early 20s. But like performance wise and writing wise, they did it pretty well, all things considered. But like I'm also I'll be honest, I am not on the anti-Robin train. I like Robin fine. It all depends on how you do him. I do
Depends on the
prefer
Robin.
that. Well,
Screw Damien.
I do prefer Batman solo, but I'm not on the anti-Robin train because I think he's like any other member of the Batman family. You can write him well, you can write him poorly. It just depends. But I think character-wise, I think he's fine.
But
Tim
Robin
Drake and
is.
Tim Drake are both great characters.
Oh, actually, Forrest, you were saying something. Sorry, man.
No, I was just saying Team Tim as far as Robins.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
Tim
great.
is the
Timmy.
best. Though I do like Jason Todd because he got a bad rap. But anybody who has the guts to take the tires off the Batmobile while Batman's fighting crime and try and rip it off, that's like, that to me is the ultimate. But Robin is always
Jason
been
Todd
there
there.
to kind of liven up the darkness, both personally for the character as to not let him fall too far into the darkness, but also to keep the series from getting too dark.
Mhm.
The darkest moments of Batman, unless they're killing Robin, usually involve Batman and not Robin. And that's the reason why I think if you're going to go darker like these films,
Mhm.
it's there. But in Forever and Batman and Robin, those films are not all that dark. They have slightly dark moments to them,
Yeah.
but they are not as dark as the other two because you have to have those light things. So again, it's all about what you want to do. He's a tonal element. Now you could make a Robin that's extremely serious. I just don't. I haven't seen it yet in physical, but I'm sure. What is it? Who's the Aronofsky? When Aronofsky does Batman, I think he could do a Batman and a Robin where the Robin makes it still just as dark.
I'm still waiting for
tried-
Darren
he tried-
Aronofsky to do a Scarecrow movie.
So
He tried to do his Batman, like his Batman cross with Taxi Driver. He tried to do that.
Far too far from the character, I think.
It's
Well,
called
but
Joker.
then also, let's not forget Damian Wayne, who was Robin.
Let's forget
Talk about a serious Robin. Holy crap!
Yes. No, I mean, I'll admit that brings in the whole League of Shadows thing and
let's get back.
Talia and Raj. And
Let's
I
get
love
Yeah, we're
those
getting way off track.
Let's get back to the plot. So we have two different plot character twisting going on here. On the one hand, we got the newspaper reporter Alexander Knox, who was played by Robert Wall, and I think he plays him pretty decently. And ultimately, we also have the damsel in distress here by the name of Vicki Vale, where she is ultimately fascinated by the Batman.
He screams a lot.
She likes Beth.
She likes bats.
Photojournalist Vicki Vale.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a photojournalist that was in the Times magazine and all that jazz, and them two get together. Meanwhile, there's a very interesting character here by the name of Grissom,
Mm-hmm.
who is played by Jack Palance, who
Mhm.
is a phenomenal character actor. He's played Dracula, a priest in a western, and I think he also did a very cool movie called Panic in the Streets back in the day.
He did Cops and Robertsons, which I enjoy, even though it's not a good movie.
Tango and Cat.
I didn't like that one.
He
But
won,
yeah.
he won Best Supporting Actor for City Slickers.
Yep. That was a fun movie.
But ultimately, he is the big cat in town. And he actually does run Jack Napier as like his number one. Yep.
You are my number one guy. As opposed to you are my number one.
But Jack
Big difference.
doesn't like this. In fact, he is actually having an affair with his boss's daughter and eventually girlfriend. But
Young enough to be his daughter. But yeah.
If he were his daughter, holy crap, that would add a whole new layer to this movie.
But any case, she and him are shanking it up together, and obviously the boss finds out, and he sends a hit after him through the Gotham police because he's got some people on his payroll. But Batman
of a corrupt cop named Eckhart.
Yep.
I love Lieutenant Eckhart. Keep in mind he was the same actor who played Porkins in Star Wars New Hope, and he also played one of the Washington men in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the one who looks like Ned Beatty but isn't.
He's not the only character that we see in here from Star Wars. Neither. We see Lando Calrissian in here as well.
Actually, I should mention the husband and father at the beginning who gets mugged.
Yeah,
I want to say he was he played either Biggs or Wedge in the Star Wars trilogy.
Actually, one thing I'm surprised you didn't try to bring up first thing, Jake. Lee Wallace, who plays the mayor,
passed away
recently. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I know you usually want to grab those actor deaths, especially if they come very close to what we got. So
how recent are we talking?
Just a few days ago.
Oh, I missed that. That.
I would say he was ringer for New York
90
City.
years old. 90 years old.
In any case, a hit was sent out to him, and Batman knew exactly what was going down. So Batman showed up. The police showed up, and not only that, but we also have the meeting of him and Vicki Vale, as Bruce Wayne in his mansion at this party.
Yes. A very awkward scene where Wool and Basinger are making fun of Wayne, and he walks up behind them and joins in the conversation.
He must have been king of the Wicker people.
Yes.
It's Japanese. How do you know that? Because I bought it in Japan. Hi, Bruce Wayne.
I always wanted to have one of those mirrors that you could see. You could see out, and no one could see in. Because I love how that camera is just shown and it's panning back and forth.
Yeah, he is my top tier. Michael Keaton is one of my top tiers for the depiction of Bruce Wayne, just because of how he does a great job of showing the duality, because you feel like he is a much lighthearted character. You can tell that he is that lighthearted playboy almost. The only one I like almost as equal, oddly enough, is Ben Affleck's portrayal of Bruce Wayne. I feel like there was a lot of confusion, especially when you have the Zack Snyder and then the whole incident with all that kind of messing it up a little bit. But I do think that his portrayal was also really good, just as showing that business side. But whereas Keaton, I thought he did an excellent job about showing kind of that lighthearted playboy side.
Affleck also did a really good job with the world weariness of an older Batman, which was
I was not getting a Playboy vibe off of Keaton. Not really.
I think.
No.
I personally think Kilmer, even Clooney and Bale were more believable as Bill. As
Clooney definitely has the Playboy thing down,
because he was very shy to Vicki Vale. In fact, it took him a long ass time to actually tell her his really true feelings. So I didn't see a Playboyness at all about
I
Michael
wouldn't call
Keaton.
him a Playboy, but I would say he did seem capable at being a public figure, if that makes sense. Like he seemed eccentric and odd and a little retiring, but he seemed believable. Exactly. He felt believable as someone who could have a party like this and slip among the guests, and the ones that know him he'd have a good chat, and the ones that didn't would make jokes behind his back. And it would work. And although you got to wonder if Knox was such a hotshot reporter, you'd think he'd know what Bruce Wayne looked like.
Yeah.
You would think so, but keep in mind that the primary. So I could totally buy him as not so much like a 80s Donald Trump, let's say, who was definitely like Playboy kind of. That's how he advertised himself. Like I don't think of him like that. I think that he was more in the mold of. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Howard Hughes. Or someone that just happened to be, but that's what I mean though. But eccentric in kind of a, I mean, he was a playboy in his own right, but he was the kind of person that could say, such and such impossible thing. Take care of that, would you? Like he could say that, and like you see that with Bruce Wayne, like he'll be like, that so and so we need a refill on this and that. Oh, and give Knox a grant, and just says that just kind of off the cuff. And so you get the idea that he's at least playing the part of someone that doesn't necessarily live in the real world, and that he might be just the son of wealth and everything. You only really get much in the way of like Bruce Wayne, the businessman. You only really get that in the sense of like with Batman Returns when he's talking to Max Schreck. That side of him is emphasized more in Forever and Return and Robin and the Christopher Nolan ones. I
feel like we're getting lost in the weeds here.
I know.
We'll move past
well, before we move past, we do have to mention the party also introduces a very important part of technically we were introduced earlier, but it's a reintroduction to Commissioner Gordon, who's a very important. And during the party, he gets this message that Napier is cleaning out Axis Chemicals, and who's in charge? Eckhart.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
And then so then Alfred comes over to Bruce Wayne. He's like, Commissioner Gordon had to go. Oh, well,
unexpectedly.
Very unexpected.
Well, you forgot another thing that technically it was introduced in that opening scene, but another thing that gets reinforced on a subtle level is actually some early Prince songs, but we'll get to that when we get to the soundtrack.
Yeah, there's some Prince in there.
A lot of Prince.
Yeah.
So back to the factory.
Yes.
Yep. So back to the factory, we had three different factions showing up. The one that has been called in by Grissom. The second that the mayor has been alerted to. And Batman ends up showing up unexpectedly in this showdown with Jack, because he's been told to go and basically snuff out these people in this factory, and he and shut it down. So once he goes in, and once he realizes that nothing is in the safe, he's like, boys, I think we've been ratted out.
Boys, watch
And
it.
what's funny is that's not the only time he mentions rats in movies. He mentioned rats in The Departed. So that's.
And he refers to Batman as a flying rat.
I smell
Flying mouse.
dirty,
Flying mouse,
stinking rat.
Yeah. So you have basically Eckert goes in and tells everyone shoot to kill.
Yeah.
And Gordon comes in and says and gets the bullhorn and says, "Get him alive."
Yeah.
What was
Gordon knows he's on the payroll.
What's
Gordon
that?
knows he's on the payroll.
And
Yeah.
the only reason why Batman does anything with the police people that are going after Jack is because they're getting in his way, you know. So he leaves a couple of them hanging and goes straight for Joker. But somewhere in the middle of it all, Eckhart gets involved and gets whacked.
Hey, Eckhart, think about the future.
Yeah.
Because he had actually told him something like that in an alleyway.
Napier or Eckhart had tried to shake Napier down in an earlier scene. Yeah.
I like how they have Batman appear in this. I know it's kind of weird that he just kind of comes and goes, but he acts like a ghost. Like you just see the spirit of him, and he's just gone.
He's a
For a
ninja.
moment there, he's looking around for him, and he's just like, must be seeing things. All right, back to where I was.
Yeah,
Right.
they got the whole the thing that Batman Begins took and ran with as far as like theatrics and disappearing in the puff of smoke and all that. They did that full force here, and because he just kind of appears and disappears, and because he's a mysterious figure anyway, it's like, oh yeah, this guy really is trying to give off the impression like he's this larger than life mythic figure, and he really. Especially in that scene when he first appears and his face is in shadow, and it's like, yeah, you can see why someone might be intimidated by this guy.
And one of my favorite things about Batman has always been the running joke, mainly with Gordon. He'll be talking with Gordon and then he's gone.
Disappears.
And that was like a running joke throughout the animated series, throughout the Nolan films, if I remember correctly. Definitely, they tried it in Justice League.
I remember it
in Gotham.
in the Nightfall story arc when Jean-Paul Vale is Batman. He's like Gordon turns around and he's like, "What? You're still here?" He's like, "You're still here?"
Nightfall had its moments.
That was my earliest. That actually, Nightfall was for me childhood nostalgia because that was
pretty much for me too.
I like to think that I like to think. Well, I like to think that maybe Batman disappears mid-conversation, not because he wants to be mysterious, but maybe because he's a terrible conversationalist.
Well, and that's fitting with the Keaton's thing. He's kind of awkward about the conversation. He's not terrible at it, but he's awkward about it.
So, plot.
Dustin,
Where are we in the plot? Has he become the Joker yet?
Not yet.
Just about.
He ends up.
The movie doesn't really kick off until he becomes the Joker.
Yeah.
Correct. Dustin, why don't you tell us how the Joker becomes the Joker?
Well, in the classic way, surely.
Well, he goes right into that vat of gunk, and that's pretty much all there is to it.
Ultimately, he is falling off that
Ledge.
What is it? Ledge.
Yeah.
And
The scaffolding.
Batman tries to hold on to him, but his gloves slip, and then he falls into the vat.
Mhm.
So ultimately he sinks into the goop, and he's supposedly fallen to his death. Little do they know, he's turned up in some unknown area of Arkham, probably. And
Actually, Arkham wasn't even in this movie.
he is
It
a man.
It wasn't in there until forever.
You're right, right.
He is a man who has been disfigured, and
Yes.
he ends up going after
You see him in a back alley
Classic
doctor's office where they try to fix this because he gets shot. You got to mention that he gets shot.
Yeah.
And they were trying to fix the scarring, and then there was also the discoloration from the chemicals. Interesting side note about that: apparently, the tools in that scene were also props in Little Shop of Horrors. They just used the same set of tools. I'm like, that's kind of fun.
That is cool. Now that's an interesting addition to the mythos, which the comics never really made explicit, but the idea that the rictus grin is like an additional feature in an attempt to correct everything, which I thought, hey, that's cool.
In the killing, actually in the Killing Joke, after as soon as he takes the Red Hood off, he's already got that grin. He's already got the grin.
Yeah.
Well, the makeup for the grin that they give for the Joker on this is it just adds an extra bit of disturbingness,
especially after he ends up killing his boss. He's sitting there in that chair with that green glint in his eyes and the grin, and then he does the classic oop oop.
You got to back up to the start of that because that whole scene is classic. And again, I used that in my senior seminar to talk about Gothic and storytelling. But he gets a similarly interesting introduction because you had like the green tipped or the white hand with the green nails raising out of the sewage. You had the back view in the doctor's office, but you didn't really see him full on. And then in this one, you're focused on Grissom, and you got the elevator open in the background with the Joker now dressed up as the Joker, but you see him in shadow at first and have a conversation, and then he steps into the light. And I just thought that was just a great reveal. It was a great effective use, and the dialogue between them was actually pretty good. And one of my favorite parts of the whole thing is when he just pumps Grissom full of lead, and then he's like, "Oh, what a day!"
Well, and even right before that, one of the best intro lines for a villain ever: "Jack is dead, my friend. You can call me Joker." And as you can see, I'm a lot happier. And you can actually, one of my favorite movie mistakes. You can actually see a purple blotch on his makeup on his neck.
Yeah. Wait till they get a load of me.
Yeah. That was
one of the other classic scenes.
Well, no, that was the end of that one, wasn't it? He's now in Grissom's chair and he's like looking at the paper or whatever.
He's now in control of his empire.
Right. And
correct.
Like, wait till they get a load of
and
me.
The next scene after that is the that involves the Joker is the board meeting that he comes to. In fact, he's already there and he's speaking to them, and he's all face painted and stuff like that to make him look like he's like normal. And one person.
Why don't we hear this from Grissom? Yeah, what's with that stupid grin? Life's been good.
What if we don't want to do that? Well,
Tony, nobody wants a war. If we can't do business, why, we'll just shake hands and that'll be it.
I gotta wonder if they copied this scene in Dick Tracy, because there's a very similar scene in Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy ripped this movie off big time.
But in a good way.
I would say because I'm a fan of both. Batman definitely ripped off Dick Tracy as far as the Rogues Gallery.
Oh yeah.
It imitated it as far as the rogues
Yeah.
go.
Oh yeah,
They,
well
they both probably gave to each other. And I found it intriguing that apparently, of all people, Al Pacino, who would go on to star in Dick Tracy, was apparently considered for Batman. That would have been a different
actually, Al Pacino as Two-Face.
I could
Ooh,
see
now
that.
you're talking. Now
I
you're
could
talking.
see that.
Or even
But,
better, Robert De Niro as Two-Face. Holy shit.
and of course, in Dick Tracy, you also had Dustin Hoffman, who was a forerunner for Penguin. But so you got some fun. But the
Overlap.
that scene, you do have kind of the introduction of some like the Joker's sort of gag weapons or whatever, like that buzzer that he uses was you get a little hot under the collar.
Well,
His morbid sense of humor too.
and to go a little further with
crazy.
with the Joker as he goes along, eventually he factory produces a vaping like substance that will turn people into laughing
The Joker.
laughing
the Joker,
robots.
Well, it's
I
the
know
Joker
that's been
venom that
used in
gives him the
comics.
rictus grin.
Was that in the comics prior to this, or was it?
Yes, it
after
was.
this? Okay.
It was in the
Because
comics
again-
already.
And then
Yeah.
they toned it down in the 50s. Then they toned it down in the 50s and just made the Joker a mere trickster.
Because I know
Yeah.
the 50s and 60s Batman was
Well, he was more of a trickster.
very similar to Adam West Batman.
Yeah, well, Adam West Batman, he'd be like climbing a rope up the up a side of the building, and Santa Claus would come out the
Well,
side
it's like
window.
that. It's like that Clerks thing where they did the take on it, and it looks like they're climbing up, and you realize that they just turned the camera and they're just going. It's like,
That's
why are we
right.
doing this?
But yeah, it was around the 70s that they turned Joker back into a homicidal maniac. With
Yeah.
the
And it was the late 80s and early 90s that brought back the real Dark Knight type things.
Well, I was going to wait on trying to get into the other influences a little bit, but it one of the major influences on this was The Killing Joke, with The Dark Knight Returns being another big influence.
And also,
And The Dark Knight Returns is freaking dark.
Oh yeah.
Frank Miller's storyline, and then you got Alan Moore with The Killing Joke.
Also, I would say the Steve Englehart run from the late 70s too.
Oh yeah.
Probably was part of it too. Englehart was actually involved, I think, with the script on this, which is part of the reason why or one of the two. But yeah, the Burton has said that he had trouble reading comics. He never cared to read them. And for whatever reason, The Killing Joke clicked for him. He was able to read it.
Yeah.
And he actually really enjoyed it. And
He never knew about the panel layout because he was always like, what order do I read them in?
Right.
Well, as far as influences, we have to say that yes, all that's true, but let's not forget the original incarnation of Batman from the 30s was pretty damn dark, much darker than people realize.
He used a gun.
He'd use a gun, but also just his attitude towards life and the kind of people that he faced. It was the 30s, but even then, they don't tone it down that much.
He was more vigilante then,
So much of the Punisher
instead of superhero.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's very rarely. Well, Adam West is really the only time he was superhero.
I don't know, 50s, 60s, and early 70s.
Well, maybe then.
I would think early 70s is when they started bringing him back. When Denny O'Neil took over, that's when they started making him the Dark Knight again.
Yeah.
But just a quick shout out because we haven't mentioned him yet. Joker's right hand man, Bob.
Yes,
best character ever.
An action figure.
Yeah.
He's so great. I love Bob.
Yeah, we're probably gonna skip the characters segment of the show just because we're kind of introducing everybody as they.
Yeah, I think
as they show up. Plus,
we're
we're approaching the end of showtime, so we gotta hustle this along, guys.
Yeah.
Somewhere right along in there was one of my favorite little scenes in the whole thing. It's where Joker and Bob are in the Joker's lair, and they're talking about Batman on the TV, and you see this boxing glove go into the set, and then it's like, Batman, and he's like, Could someone tell me what kind of a world we're living in where a man dressed as a bat is stealing all my friends?
This town needs
This
an enema.
town needs an enema.
Yes.
So we get to where he's taken back over the crime syndicate. I'll help us move along a little bit. As he's taken over the syndicate and starting to wind up his scheme, as David said, he's producing the kind of vapor poison, and he is putting it into the cosmetics, as you get to actually see. And I really like this. It kind of reminds me of the Howling scene almost, where you've got the reporters sitting there and they're doing that newscast, and then they're talking about the two dead women, and she ends up just starting to crack up, and then eventually she ends up laughing to the point where she just falls over dead.
Yeah.
And
the women they were talking about.
Did you notice when they did that whole thing where he's like doing the commercial and they're saying the "Love that Joker"? I didn't realize it was the two people that died.
Oh, I knew that.
Right.
Love that Joker.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the real genius of the plot itself, which again a lot of people don't think about. But it's not just that he poisoned. Yeah, the police have got it wrong. They're only looking for one product. The Joker's tainted hundreds of chemicals at the source, and not just that, but the idea of lipstick used with this product, that it would activate that. It would create that Joker toxin because of the combination, and it's like, oh, that's cool, and that's world's greatest detective work right there.
Yeah.
So and that is a follow up to another plot thread that we kind of ignore is the Bruce and Vicki flirtation, which also she is of course still digging, trying to find the story. And that part took place after what has become one of the more controversial decisions in the film, where Alfred decides to play matchmaker by letting Vicki into the Batcave. Yeah. Apparently, certain people were not thrilled by that idea.
Well, I also know that the twist that Joker killed Batman's parents is also it's a source of contention among Batmans to this day.
And see, it always worked for me in part because my favorite line probably that the Joker ever had was from The Killing Joke, where he said, "If I had to have a past, I'd prefer it be multiple choice." Yeah. And I really feel like this one kind of plays into that because it gives you said the classic storyline, but really The Killing Joke, I think, was the first time that he was given that origin, and it has since been debunked as the origin. Like it probably had
what I meant by classic, I meant in terms of like the Vada Chemicals thing, not necessarily how he got there, but yeah.
Although, if you go on the Jingle Bells version of Batman, I don't know if you guys remember this. Jingle Bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg. But the Joker got away, you know?
Yeah, he always does.
Yeah.
not this time.
That's from the animated series. I think that's from the very first episode of the animated series.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Second episode, actually.
Yeah,
second episode? On Leather Wings is the first episode.
There was a moment in one of the I think it was in one of the comics I read where someone makes a crack that maybe the Joker will stay in Arkham for more than an hour and a half this time.
And this Joker does his best to try and woo, because he falls for the reporter lady, which is interesting.
Vicki Vale.
And has some amazing scenes where he's basically trying to woo her. The first being at the art museum, which is a classic one. It introduces the Joker flower. Basically, that just disdain for society and just chaos, where they're wrecking all the paintings. Except he's like, no, I like this one.
And it's a disturbing.
One of his best moments is in there where he's like, the skulls. You give it all such a nice touch. I don't know if it's art, but I like it. And then, it's like, we mustn't compare ourselves to regular people. We're artists. And he's like, I make art until someone dies. See? I'm the world's first fully functioning homicidal artist.
This is another one that is very
My face on the
quotable.
$1 bill.
And then, of course, the quote that I always loved from when I was a kid is when Batman comes in, makes his entrance, and Joker's like, where does he get the
wonderful
wonderful
I
toy?"
do like the
There are a
line.
lot of great Joker quotes in this movie.
I do like the line where he it's basically his calling card. Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale?
Yes.
I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it.
Which
And
I
then
kind of
followed by words that everyone should live by, which is never rub another man's rhubarb.
he just has some odd idiosyncratic dialogue.
I love it.
Thing.
He even throws out a bit of French, which supposedly was a direct nod to the origins of the Man Who Laughs. So I thought that was kind
Bruce Wayne, n'est-ce pas?
of, but
like, it really seems like with Jack Nicholson, like they just turned on the camera and let him do whatever he wanted.
But yeah, like you said, Vicki Vale starts to fall for Bruce Wayne. In fact, he ends up inviting her over to the Wayne Mansion, and I just get an awkward feeling with her sitting at the end of the table and him sitting at the other table, and she's like, "Can you pass the salt?" And he gets up and passes and brings it all the way down.
Supposedly, Keaton suggested that himself. He said it would be funnier that way. And then he also, what's it?
To the kitchen where he's more
comfortable. And they also, he improvised the line, from what I read, he improvised the line where she's like,
look, you didn't hear.
You've been in this room before, and he's like, no, I don't think so. But I think the kitchen scene was nice because you really see them interacting with Alfred. You get an idea of like the family bond with him and Alfred, which is really cool. Michael Gough is such a good Alfred. Like, I've seen a lot of versions of Alfred, and I like most of them. But this is like the old grandfatherly, but still takes no guff. He still has some biting one-liners here and there. I just liked him a lot. And I know you guys will appreciate that supposedly they cast Gough because of his roles in the
Hammer
horror films.
Yep.
That's kind of fun.
It's also why Tim Burton casted Christopher Lee in his later movies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the whole climax of the film is not only out of it's kind of several things. It's German Expressionism. It's like the Universal monster movies, but especially the Hammer films. You can totally see all over the place.
It kind of reminds me of like the end of the Hunchback of Notre Dame a little bit because of the Liberty Bell falling and everyone.
Before we have that scene, we do have the whole parade scene, which we got.
Before we hit that, I just want to set the setup for it because they've been talking about this from the beginning, that they wanted to do this and they were having trouble figuring out what the money from it, and it was already ingrained with a lot of the gangs there.
It's like a bicentennial or something.
Yeah, they wanted to bring in money. They said, yes, it's going to cost us a ton of money, but look at all the business it'll bring. It'll bring Gotham back to life.
Mm-hmm.
So you're already seeing Gotham as a dying city in a way, or a rotting city more than a dying city. And also, that's when the Joker makes his first appearance, when they do that big speech about it, where he does, the pen is mightier than the sword, stabs the guy in the neck.
Love it.
Well, and I also like the mimes that come out first. Those are kind of cool.
That leads to the parade eventually, because Joker takes it over. It's like, I'll do it, and I'm going to give away 20 million. And you can see everybody who was disinterested suddenly
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, Batman comes in on the bat plane, and he ends up getting shot down by that one shot shooter.
No, that was a piss. That was like had multiple bullets, but it was
Right.
just like,
Come on.
Yeah, I always liked him drawing that gun. It was so
I
interesting.
love that.
He's on that big old float. They're rocking some Prince. They're having some good times all around. And then they start putting the gas out of the balloons, and people are dropping like flies. And
Money,
scared the
hubba,
crap
hubba,
out of me.
hubba. Who do you trust? Me? I'm giving away free money. And where is the Batman? He's at home. Watching his tights.
You know how bad
Quotable.
the city is when
Quotable.
will willingly accept cash from a known homicidal maniac.
well,
Yeah. And
Even
now
though it's
comes the
funny.
part where I relieve you, the little people, of the burden of your failed and useless lives. But as my plastic surgeon always said, if you gotta go, go with a smile.
That thing
Right.
scared the crap out of me as a child, and it was a while before I could just watch it without just recoiling, just because of the people dying and panicking and just the sheer horror in the scene. You could feel it in that going forward. Nowadays, it's nothing compared to what I've seen now. But back
when you're a kid, it makes an impression. Yes.
Well, I really love that this Joker he's homicidal and crazy and all that stuff, but he has so much fun doing what he's doing. It's like that to me is essential for the Joker, because like other interpretations like Heath Ledger and even Joaquin Phoenix, like they're very clearly not only angry people, but they're also very clearly like they have like really clear like messages to send,
I
which
feel like
is
Ledger was
I
having fun
just
with
don't think I could
a
be in this
different
world
kind
without
of fun,
you.
though.
Well, yeah, it's a darker, more sadistic kind of fun, but I think he was having fun.
Artistic.
Was that?
I say darker and actually sadistic and less artistic.
Yes.
Yeah,
This one was a little more. The Joker that I guess was definitely a big in the animated series as well. He had more flair, more style.
Yeah.
He had a feel
Fun.
for the theatrical that was a little like the Ledger version summed it up. I'm an agent of chaos, which is
Exactly.
kind of, but he still had fun
Some
with it.
people just
Like,
want to
I
watch
think-
the world.
It was a different kind of fun. Like I said, like it was
Right.
more perverse because this Joker. Because like keep in mind that Jack Napier, his background in this film is that he has a background in chemistry and art, because that's a very critical thing. And keep in mind that Tim Burton's whole thing is being an artist, predominantly an illustrator first, and then transitioning into filmmaking and everything. So he's that clearly, I'm sure, must have appealed to him on some level, even if he's not a big superhero guy.
And actually, along those lines, we also kind of skipped the scene where he shows up at Vale's apartment and tries to put the moves on her. After Bruce Wayne is already there apologizing for a previous, and it's fun how both of them, when they enter the apartment, both Bruce Wayne and Joker, both are like, "Nice place, lots of space." They say almost exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And
and they're both trying to. It's funny because they are both trying to impress her in their own way, and well, that's one of my favorite Bruce scenes because he's got two lines that I love, which is "You're a nice girl and I like you a lot, but for right now, shut up." And, like that was perfect. And then also, I love that he tries to say it, but he can't get the words out. Like I've been there, but also, of course, that's got only Michael Keaton could do this. You know what happened to this guy, Jack? Yeah, he's across the ways, guys, and bam! First says lights out. Now you want to get nuts? Come on! That's like only he could do that.
right.
Well,
What's up?
yeah.
My friend Mike really likes that line. Let's get nuts.
I didn't know by now.
Did we talk about all the characters that we wanted to talk about?
I think so.
We've covered
I think so.
everybody. We've covered Joker. We've covered Vicki. We've covered Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Mhm.
Well, we didn't cover the ninja guys in the alley, who kind of make a return in the belfry scene.
I like the little guy that comes out from behind Jack too, especially with Eckhart in the very beginning. He's like, he comes out right and does brings his gun out just right in front of him, just to be his wingman, you know.
I think we
Well, and I feel so sorry that Bob had to die in such a kind of a capricious way. But then again, I could totally believe that Joker would do that. But it becomes funny.
Joker is known for randomly offing even his closest friends and allies. He has tried. He has either straight up killed or tried to kill everyone basically he's ever allied himself with.
Yeah. Well, but as sad as I am that he dies, his death scene's hilarious because it's like, Bob, it was, he stole my balloons. Why didn't somebody tell me he had one of those things? Bob, gun, bang. Leave me alone, boys.
Actually, I remember Bob being probably one of the few villain henchmen to get his own action figure.
I know.
He was iconic as a cool character.
I wonder if Nicholson had anything to do with that, because Bob was played by someone who was a close personal friend of his. Tracy Walter.
I think now that you mention it, I think he might have, because Jack Nicholson, in terms of his deal to do the movie, he made a killing off this movie. Not just with his upfront salary, but with the back end and with the merchandising and everything. Like, he negotiated a deal with this thing.
Which is why they kill him at the end, so they don't have to bring him back.
Probably.
It could have been.
That whole scene at the end with the bell tower where they climb it, and you have it when he gets up to the top and he's taking out the henchman while the Joker is sitting there waltzing with Vicki at that. It's just, to me, that is, I really do feel like this was probably, it was a very close come onto the animated series Joker that came later, but it's just the way that he would do things, that kind of manic style. It wasn't I know one of the things, and Jake and I have talked about this a while when comparing Ledger's Joker to Nicholson's, and the idea that, Jack Nicholson really wasn't trying all that much in this part as opposed to Ledger when it comes. But I feel like this was a much different way of doing it as opposed to, say, The Shining's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like,
Jack Torrance wouldn't have done all that. I have slightly amended that viewpoint. Like, it's my understanding that Nicholson really wanted the role. He really enjoyed being Joker. So I give him more credit than I did before in terms of his commitment to the role. But again, I still feel like that and commitment to the role is something I would not accuse Jared Leto of not being committed.
Yeah.
But he took it in directions he probably didn't need to. So there are different strengths and weaknesses that each of them bring. Definitely, I do like how in that that waltz and then his confrontation with Batman. I understand that his throwaway gag about the glasses. I always thought of it as a throwaway gag, but apparently it was a direct nod to the 60s as well.
Bookworm.
Yeah.
But it still works as a throwaway gag, because one thing I did not say in the intro is that I have still only seen maybe 3 episodes and the movie of Batman 66.
Oh, wow.
And at the time that I saw this, I didn't know there was a Batman 66.
Really?
I didn't know that. I was coming to this fresh. Like, I may have heard about it in passing. So so that was a throwaway gag that I always got, but I didn't get. You know what I mean? As far as this, later things to come, I understand that waltz was a direct inspiration for Mary Jane's Last Dance, which was a great creepy music video that I love. So I like how things kind of come from one
And
place, from Batman
I
66
assume,
to Mary Jane's Last Dance.
and I assume not Peter Parker's Mary Jane. Because we're talking about comic books and everything. Well, we need a shout out in that whole scene. We got to shout out some of the best Joker lines we get. Besides, you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses, would you? We got that, but we also have one of my favorites here. As if we were meant for each other. Beauty and the Beast. Of course, if anyone else calls you Beast, I'll rip their lungs out. But it's like that whole climax is totally Beauty and the Beast. It's, it's that classical love triangle in the Gothic setting and the big showdown of everything. It's like, that's perfect. Plus, it's the only Batman film where the leading lady's going to blow the villain or pretend to, which I'm like, that's perfect. And the face he makes is just classic.
Actually, that one, and the reaction when he's actually hit by Batman the first time, the kind of comic surprise look that he has on his face, which is, and that's how he looks sometimes in the comics when he gets hit by Batman, depending on which version he is.
Yeah.
It's just that way. And when he dies, because he falls off the building, but he gets rescued by a helicopter, but Batman basically ties him to a statue, which weighs him down, and he falls to his death.
Yeah.
But that thing he has that just keeps laughing when he's dead there, and the police are kind of like tentatively trying to, like, is he dead?
I never liked that they killed him at the end, but that scene where he's laying there crumpled on the pavement and that thing is still laughing, still going off. I love that.
Yes.
I love that represents, because it basically means that the physical body is dead, but that spirit is still hanging in the air somewhere. Like, I think that's just great. Plus, we forget also another classic line, the gargoyle. What are you laughing at? That whole thing. I love that.
Yeah.
So we got through the plot.
Yep. So now, what do y'all think about the special effects?
All the effects in this movie worked pretty well.
Yeah.
The Batmobile, that was the coolest design to date. I know people say the Dark Knight is their favorite for the most part, but I love the design of this Batmobile.
Yes.
It's a very classical noir decor Batmobile.
Well, and it's an actual car instead of a tank, which I really like. And it just, you're right. It has a classic look. And also it goes so well with, I think that Michael Keaton's suit, I think that's to me, that suit is actually better than any of the comics suits, which is really weird to say, because again, it was kind of a radical departure because it was all black instead of the gray, blue, or gray and black, whatever. Like, to me, it makes total sense for him to be in all black. And I like not only all black, but I like the yellow oval. Like, that's my favorite design for a Batman costume. I don't like it when it's the black symbol that you can't even see because it's black on black. I like that you can actually see it.
Yeah, and they say that the original explanation for the yellow oval was that was the main bulletproof thing, but it was to draw fire to it so that
keep it away from his head.
That was the explanation in the earlier scripts. In the comics, they just added the yellow oval in order to trademark it.
Yeah. Well, but I could totally believe that. I could totally believe that it's like, draw fire there because you're protected.
For kids.
Yeah.
but
did
they leave it at
I also liked the whole fact that the car had like this cool ass shield that he could voice command.
Oh yeah.
and then voice command it to drive towards him
and to stop right
exactly
as it's about to hit him. Well, as far as this isn't really effects in the classical special effects sense, but the art direction, which won an Oscar.
Oh,
The
yes.
Anton First.
Deserving for that.
Phenomenal art direction.
Anton First, who did that, who is sadly no longer with us. He actually killed himself not too long after the movie came out. But his look for Gotham is totally out of German expressionism and film noir, and it.
I like Burton's.
I
like Burton's description of it, where it's like it's like New York City if the planning committee had just gone off the rails.
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
I love this Gotham. I love the Gotham in both this one and Returns. And I'll talk more about that in that one to save us.
And again, I think you said before, it heavily influenced the look in the animated series. So that for me was Gotham for a long time. Yeah. And I will admit that was one of the most jarring things for me with seeing the Batman Begins was the look was completely different. That was the biggest thing.
What
shot in real cities,
right? Yeah.
What
you trying to say, Dave?
I was trying to say, what did y'all think about the gadgetry that Batman was equipped with?
Those wonderful toys.
Yeah.
Well, it was.
Where does he get those?
I always wanted that grappling hook launcher.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, the grappling hook plus the fact that he actually uses batarangs, which I'm like, thank God, because that always pissed me off about the Nolan ones is that the best that we get is maybe like a shot of like, and it goes like it hits into the wall and like Batman Begins, but like here he actually uses batarangs that are used the way that they're meant to be used.
This one, for the most part, the tools that he used looked like they were supposed to look, and they looked more or less functional. They looked more or less like what you would expect him to use, but in a more comic booky. Because you're right. The Nolan ones were a little bit more based on actual design, like real stuff. And then when you get into the Schumacher ones, that stuff just got ridiculous. Not Batman 66 ridiculous, but
Well, but hey, did Christian Bale? Did he have his own back credit card? I don't think so.
No, I don't think he did.
Actually, I will say this: that
Never
was the
leave the cave without it.
That was the big mistake about Clooney's Batman and Robin. They decided to skirt on the edges of it. They should have just gone full Batman 66. Yeah. Clooney would have been perfect for it, and it would have been hilarious.
I still say in that one, now that I've finally seen it, Clooney was basically playing George Clooney. But if there's any man alive who could play Adam West, it's probably George Clooney.
Yeah, because he can do comedy really well, and I'll defend Clooney's Batman in the sense that he had a great speaking voice, and I think he looked the part the best out of those original four, and I think I would argue that he was the most true to Bruce Wayne, physically and in his persona and everything. And I think if he wanted to do it seriously, he could have done it really, really well. It would just obviously require a script that would show that side of him. But he can also do comedy as well. Like he could have gone full blown "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" on that thing. Oh,
right.
I thought that's what he did.
No, this movie reminded me. In that movie, he reminded me a lot more of like Dusk Till Dawn, honestly. But just
a little bit.
I think we're veering off a little bit here.
Yeah, we are.
We're talking about a good movie, so
well, we should.
Let's talk about the music.
The music, yes.
I have
the music. Danny Elfman, who was originally in the band called Oingo Boingo.
Yep.
But who originally termed the first Dead Man's Party.
I will say Danny Elfman's score. It is one of my top 3 movie scores, along with Aliens and Back to the Future.
It is a phenomenal score. It is. It really set the tone not just for Batman, but in a sense, I think most superhero scores since then have they've been, do we want to go more Danny Elfman or do we want to go more
John
John Williams? And it's
yeah.
it's those are kind of the options, at least to the ones that have worked. And of course,
And at
Elfman
this point in
himself
time, this was when Danny Elfman was like in the top of his field.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he still is, but he was going pretty strong.
Well,
it
he
was
starting
because
to.
of-
He was starting to.
It was because of this film that both he and Tim Burton became like bankable people in their field. Because keep in mind that they were both kind of novelties with Pee-wee's Big Adventure and with Beetlejuice. But then here they got certified as being like hit maker, director / composer, respectively. But you're right, though. This is one of the definitive, not only superhero scores, but definitive Danny Elfman scores and all that stuff. And let's not be remiss in dismissing the late great Prince. For I love his Batman soundtrack, and like most of the songs that are on that album are in the movie. They're kind of subtle, but they're in there. Least of
Party
all,
Man.
Party Man's great. Trust is
Joker
in there.
loves Prince.
Well, who doesn't love Prince? And that album produced a number one hit for Prince that unfortunately is Bat Dance, which is because of the complex licensing and everything. It's unfortunately not on any of his greatest hits albums or whatever, but it was a number one hit. So this movie not only was like one of the biggest box office successes in history at that time, massive merchandising empire, star making vehicles for so many people, but it did produce a number one hit song back when people cared about that stuff.
Which I watched in the run up to this. I watched the music videos for Bat Dance and for Party Man, and Party Man's kind of fun, but honestly, the Bat Dance video,
It's Prince.
And the song is okay. Party Man's a much better song, I think.
Yeah.
Prince is he's an interesting figure. Some of his stuff is phenomenal. Some of it's kind of but
he went to places most people wouldn't go. So give him credit for always being a pioneer. And he was unquestionably Prince. He was not anybody but Prince. I mean that with no irony or sarcasm whatsoever. He was a law unto himself.
It would have been cool if we'd seen a full-on collaboration between the two of them, though, Elfman and Prince. That would have been that's a great missed opportunity.
So I guess let's move on to favorite scenes. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh man. It's hard to do, but I think I actually have it. I think I have my favorite, which is this is how you know that this is a scene that could only come from this movie made at this time. I don't think you would get a scene like this ever again, or at least not in a movie that's like relatively mainstream with toys and everything. In a hard R movie like Joker, then maybe, but like I'm thinking of the scene with like him talking to the corpse. Like I think that to me, I was like, oh, that was so great. It's like, your guys, they're not bad people. Maybe we give them a couple of days to think it over.
Yeah.
Grease them now. Okay. You are a vicious bastard, Retaliant. I'm glad you're dead.
I'm glad you did.
That whole thing, I'm like, that could only happen in that movie at that time in history. Within a movie that's meant to have like all the toys and all the merchandising and shit. But I was like, that's just so morbid. It's so fucked up that it's like, props. I love it.
It's so Joker.
It's so Joker. And it's so, talk about the gallows humor. It's like that's gallows humor writ large.
Talking with a dead guy.
Right.
Oh yeah. Not just dead, but burned alive in a pretty horrible way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of bugged me when I was a kid, but
Yeah, that's also why I thought of it, because as a kid it freaked me out, and that's usually what sticks with you as you get older, you know.
Oh, yeah,
I like a lot of scenes, but there is one scene between Vicki Vale and Batman when he's trying to get away from his droogs, and he shoots up right before he shoots up his bat thing. He's like, "How much do you weigh?" And he gets her up there, and he's like, you don't weigh 103.
like, you weigh a little more than 108.
Yeah, which that's a great line. Well, and we gotta not forget the whole scene where when she does learn who he is, like the dialogue that they have there, I think is because like a counterpoint with the Nolan films is that as good as a lot of their dialogue is, it's very kind of on the nose with its own sophistication and introspection and everything. Whereas like with the lines that they have there in the Batcave, like the way that they speak to each other, like it seems like something that real people would say, but each thing that they do say is fraught with a lot of stuff under the surface, a lot of subtext, you know, as far as like, yeah, look, sometimes I don't know what to think about this. It's just something I have to do. Why? Because no one else can. And it's like, you know, that says it all. That says exactly why he would do such a thing, you know?
Okay. Going over to you, Dustin, what is your favorite scene?
I think I would probably have to go with the Party Man scene where they play that Prince song.
Yeah.
Love it.
And even I always get it confused. It's the Trashing the Museum song, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because for some reason I seem to think that they play it. They don't play it at the parade too, do they?
Parade is Trust.
No, that's Trust.
Trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trust.
I always get them mixed up. Like it's Trust. Yeah. See, I can't help it.
Yeah.
But I always get it mixed up. Like no matter how many times I see this movie. So yeah, that's my favorite scene where they just show the Joker just going nuts.
What about you, Forrest?
Prince song is perfect for it.
Oh God, favorite scene. I would definitely. Oh God, I'm kind of leaning towards the "you weigh a little more than 108" moment. That's probably Batman's best line after "I'm Batman."
Oh yeah, his introduction is amazing.
I'm Batman.
I'm not gonna kill
I
you.
can't
but
hear
I want
that
you to do
without
me a favor.
seeing the Michael Keaton on the Celebrity Jeopardy, where he's like, "I'm Batman for the last time." No, you are not.
Yes.
It is hard to pick a favorite scene.
Yeah.
There's so many good ones. There's so many good lines. If I had to pick
even harder would be favorite quote. Oh man.
yeah. And that part of where the man dressed as a bat is stealing my press, that scene is a very close contender. But I think probably my number one is probably the scene where he offs Grissom. And then there's that whole, you know, wait till they get a load of me now. You know, the proper introduction.
Yeah.
I love
that whole scene, the shadows leading up to it, the aftermath of it. That part was just done brilliantly.
I know. I love it.
But how about you, Brandon?
Well, for me, now if it was the scene that freaked me out the most, it would have to be the parade, but that is not my favorite scene. The favorite is probably the commercial that he does.
Yeah.
That to me is like one of the perfect Joker scenes. He's sitting there behind the cart doing the exaggerated dance, or where he goes to the guy tied up. He's been using Brand X.
I like that part.
He don't look happy. He's been using Brand X. But with new and improved Joker brand, I get a grin again and again.
And that's where he indicates his plan, which again is a brilliant plan, where he's And it reflects later when they're sitting on the newscast. You see they're like the hair is all over the place.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I love that. I know what you're saying. Where can I get these fine new items? Well, that's the gag. Chances are you bought them already.
Yeah.
all right, so
So
Alrighty. Are we ready to just? I don't think we're going to do our outros. So,
Are we ready to return?
are we ready to return in 5 to 6 minutes or so?
All right.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, join us on our other channel for Batman Returns as we continue our seasonal holiday treats for you. So thank you, and like, share, and subscribe, and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Yes.